So today we are going to talk about cybersecurity guidance for industrial control systems, automation, and in particular because you folks are involved so much with oil and gas, I'm focusing on this more than any other vertical. We supply automation to just about every kind of vertical there is. And we've got a lot of installations in different sorts of oil and gas and pipeline applications. You probably have already heard of us. So I was going to go through the agenda here, but I think it's already been done. We're going to discuss the state of cybersecurity for control systems with discussions from some outside sources that I brought here in the form of articles. There's a new security guidance ebook that I just finished writing that is basically a compilation of all the InduSoft cybersecurity that we've put together and offer our customers over the years on a whole variety of different subjects that will probably be pertinent to what it is that you're doing. Also, we co-authored with Stephen on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework ebook as well. You'll see those in just a moment, so you can be able to get a copy of them for yourselves. I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the security ebook, but because of our time constraints, I can't go very far into it. There's a lot of stuff there. If you gloss over it quickly, it doesn't look like there's a lot of things there, but there really is with links to get you further and further into the subjects that you might be interested in. And finally, we'll have a discussion of the cybersecurity framework with Stephen at ENMU-Ruidoso and a Q&A session at the end. I'm in technical marketing, and I've been a cybersecurity engineer for, well, I predate the ISA SP99, and I did some consulting for NIST on some of their guidance that came out and a few other things. You can read that in my bio. That's the bio I just copied out of the book and pasted it up there so you can have a look at it a little bit later. But I predate a lot of the cybersecurity guidance that has been since 2000. And I've been doing this for quite a long time. I've spoken at a number of conferences and only just recently got back into cybersecurity. I'm surprised to find that not a lot has changed, which is weird to me. Stephen Miller, who's already been introduced, he's an associate professor and the chair of business and information systems at ENMU. And there's his background out of his book. So, as I said, InduSoft is used in various oil and gas verticals around pipelines, a lot of different things. People have used us for a variety of things and different sorts of applications all over the world. And we strive to assist our customers in designing and building safe and functional applications. We've condensed a great deal of our security guidance and discussions into this ebook that I'm going to introduce. And we've recently added on-demand engineering services that you can go onto our website, talk with an engineer in 1-hour blocks if you have some sort of issues. They're conversant on a very wide variety of subjects, including cybersecurity, and have designed applications all over the globe as well. So this is a great team of people that is available for on short notice for short blocks of time if you have questions about anything at all. And we also collaborated with ENMU on the NIST framework ebook. Stephen and I worked together. Now we were actually at the NIST conferences, and we helped put the guidance together, or we participated, I guess, and Stephen's guidance, well, he'll tell you about it when we get there. So the scope of the problem is this. Basically, IT departments believe that they are equipped to handle control system cybersecurity. Those of you who are actually in cybersecurity guidance for control systems know that this is not a true statement. Most of the IT departments are still lacking knowledge, experience, people that have their hands on this stuff. They don't really understand what they're doing. They are not equipped to handle this stuff. So I've got an example I started with. This was in Automation World. Oh, by the way, I write for several e-magazines and stuff too. You might see my articles in Control Engineering, Automation World sometimes. It depends on what the subject is that they need to talk about. But this particular one, Shell works with Yokogawa and Cisco on a unified automation cybersecurity approach. Here's the article right here on their website, and there's a good part of the article that is discussing this problem. So they go on to talk about highly publicized security breaches such as Target, Home Depot, and Sony have made it clear that companies can no longer treat cybersecurity as lightly as they have been. Okay, that sounds like a reasonable statement. However, Anthem was another one that just came up, and you mentioned Anthem, or somebody mentioned Anthem. And the issue was, to be clear, we want to applaud Anthem for their appropriate response. Upon discovering the breach, they initiated outreach to the FBI, and they handled it as well as they could. They were an insurance company. All those are retail people. Okay, so it's clear that the attacks that are becoming more focused in the public eye are on retail things that people can steal money from right away or steal information from so they can get money. But clearly, control systems haven't been targeted very much yet. I believe that's going to change maybe in 5 to 10 years. We're seeing that, and I think that some of you people probably also believe that as well. So once trusting matters of cybersecurity, this was what they did, Shell did before. They used to trust their cybersecurity stuff on a plant-by-plant basis to their local people and their local IT departments, their local whatever. But they decided to put everything under a single umbrella and handle it by joining up with Yokogawa and Cisco to form a team to manage cybersecurity for their plants. The Vice President of Industrial Automation made it clear that they were pointing to the strategic alliance and how good it was going to be and all this other stuff that goes on to explain that. Pretty much this article is for the stockholders. It's to make them feel good. There's not a lot of substance in it. And they go on to explain what they're going to do. Look at that very first sentence there. They're going to handle security patches and antivirus updates. No other cybersecurity involved. It's ridiculous. So Secure Plant, which is the name of this thing, is designed as a standard solution that they're going to implement across 50 plants, and all these plants are going to be under an umbrella, and you know, being cybersecurity experts, you know where this is going. It's not going to go anywhere. Okay, major problems that I have with this unified approach, and I want to be clear, these are my opinions, but having seen this happen over and over and over in the industries, I believe that these things are substantial errors that they've created. First, they've thrown the SME plant engineers under the bus on this. They're going to throw them out if they haven't done already. They want to take Yokohama's people as automation. They want to take Cisco as IT and implement this stuff over 50 plants that are not identical. Where, this is not going to work very well. They're only addressing security patches and antivirus, as I said. It's being managed from a central location. What's the problem with that? That's the same entry vector that was used in Target, in Anthem, in all of those attacks. It was the fact that they used the central location from the internet to get to the control systems or databases. And now they're considering, it says in the article, the refinery as part of the Internet of Things, which is to say that they think that the refinery is just as important as Mrs. Fitzby's new hot water heater. It's not critical infrastructure. So clearly the mindset is not right with this. So to this end, we've created these cybersecurity ebooks. They are free for download, or if you think that it's useful, you can go to the smashwords.com. Just put in the ISBN numbers, or just do cybersecurity or security on their search website, and those books will come up along with a list of other things. They're available as a name your price, so you can, if you find them useful, put in as much money as you want to. All proceeds benefit the ENMU-Ruidoso Foundation, and none of the profits go to us at all. So, InduSoft Cybersecurity Guide, why did we write it? Basically, this ebook, as I mentioned, is a compilation of InduSoft Cybersecurity Guidance, making it available in one location. There's a chapter on guidelines for designing and building your projects. It includes reprints of many of the InduSoft white papers, published articles, and cybersecurity guidance on virtually everything that would be used within control systems. We had a number of webinars, and I took the time to transcribe these webinars so that the information, the valuable information is put into a written form you can put your finger on right away without having to listen to the whole hour to figure out what it is you were looking for or heard. And it also contains an appendix within this framework information. These are available in MOBI, eBook, PDF, HTML, and doc formats. I've tried them on iPhone, iPad, Apple devices, Androids. I've tried it on a variety of things. The books look quite good. The graphics come out really well. So it's a useful thing that you can just carry around with you wherever you go if you need information. Here's the table of contents that's in the security ebook, and you can see the variety of subjects that are touched on that might be useful to you, including wireless networks or the cloud, using SCADA in the cloud, which is something that a lot of our customers are starting to think about. Management considerations, if you want to discuss with your management about how to manage the security for your SCADA enterprises. And here's a few pages that I just stuck on the page there so you can see kind of the subjects and the information and how deep that these subjects, we go into these subjects. This is an example out of chapter 1, very start of the book. We talk about good project design. We have this triangle called application development lifecycle, and security should be the primary design consideration before any projects are developed. Next, safety needs to be thought of, and then finally, functionality is the very last thing. So in this particular triangle, if this is followed, the way that we've outlined it. The application should be safe and secure. It should be, and it should have functionality finally after everything has been developed. We shouldn't have to go back and think about, oh, we forgot about this, we forgot about that, with holes in the application or security. You know from experience, those of you who develop applications, it's usually done backwards from this. People start with functionality first. Okay, I have to draw a button on the screen, I've got to connect to the PLC, I've got to make the thing in the bit in the PLC flash, whatever. Okay, that's how applications are usually developed. Then we go, okay, now I've got the application finished, how do I secure it? How do I put it into an environment where there could be possibly any kind of issues? And the IT department at this point usually swoops in and starts tightening things down, breaking functionality within the control system information, starts applying patches. I worked for, let me digress for a minute. I worked for as a consultant for a food and beverage company in Denver. And while I was there, I was only there like 6 months doing some actually documentation for them. And the IT department, I told the IT department that I had security eBook, or a security book that I had written some years before that they might use. And, oh, yeah, we know all about security. While I was there, they pushed a operating system update out to their 13 plants and shut them all down for 24 hours. They did not understand what they were doing, and the control system manager just completely blew up at this. But this is a common practice. I've heard this at so many like manufacturing plants and all of that sort of thing. It's been a nightmare. So if you develop your applications using this methodology in the form that I presented it, you'll usually come out okay. So we recognize that customers use InduSoft Studio, Web Studio in many different ways. This fact presents many differing security scenarios for our customers. And the reason is that a specific type of security implementation for any particular SCADA system may be entirely inappropriate for a different SCADA implementation. And that even involves factories which are, quote, identically built. Because they're not. They never are. And that's the problem with this Yokogawa thing, is because if they throw the SMEs out, which you know that they probably will, they're going to lose all that knowledge that went into constructing the plants. I worked at IBM in Boulder. We had about a mile square, 10,000 offices, a physical plant, 3 buildings with raised floor, all of that sort of stuff. And they went to a system like this with someone managing their cybersecurity, managing all of the connectivity, going and basically just managing the place. And I think about 75% of all the brain power that went into building the plant, constructing it, walked out the door. And they were completely lost for 3 years, I heard later. People were still having problems in the plant itself because all of that knowledge left. So we've recommended many different ways that security can be implemented. We've got talks and classes and webinars. We've got free technical support for our product. And individualized guidance has been available for some time, including our engineers going to on-site all over the world and helping people develop their applications. Now we have the on-demand engineering assistance available in 1-hour blocks. It's great. This is available. You can go to our website, which is on the left. Just choose products and downloads, services, and then the services on demand is there, and the web page, and you can get a hold of the guys through that webpage right there. If you guys are interested, anybody is interested in how to get our updates, our product updates, emails, information, blogs, all of that sort of stuff sent to your email box. If you go to your LinkedIn, choose groups and Wonderware InduSoft, that is, and ask to be added. Then choose it out of your groups after the administrator has added you. You can go and manage this very easily by selecting what email address you want it to go to. I use a separate email address for all my LinkedIn stuff, so it doesn't clog up my inbox. I can manage this stuff easily. And you can also set the time period that you want. So that's all I have. Thanks for attending. Here's how to contact us. And email me if you'd like a copy of this presentation, although we're going to leave it for you guys so you can download it if you want to. Our webinar, we have a bi-monthly webinars on a whole variety of subjects. Tomorrow happens to be on the engineering services. If you want to tune in, just go to our website, you can see it. And if you do, we'll send you one of our famous InduSoft t-shirts. So with that, here's Stephen, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Okay, well, I'm Stephen Miller, and I'm with Eastern New Mexico University in Ruidoso, but I actually live in Rockport, Texas. Spent most of my life in Houston, and I developed this cybersecurity program for Eastern New Mexico University, but it's actually expanded to something called Sun Online, which is a consortium of the community colleges in New Mexico. So we teach at Santa Fe Community College, CNM, at UNM, Taos, Los Alamos, and several others. We also have a working relationship with the labs, both the Sandia labs and the Idaho labs, not the Los Alamos labs for some reason, but and New Mexico Tech. So if you, we'll talk a little bit more about that. When I was getting ready to do this presentation, when I worked for Exxon, I worked for Exxon Pipeline for 13 years, and of course we were a member of the American Petroleum Institute. And in 1986, we had a pipeline cybernetics symposium at the Hyatt Regency, and I had written an article for that symposium on the overview of pipeline data flow and network potential. Back then, you know, everything was kind of hardwired systems, and what we had, and a lot of mini computers and proprietary systems, both SCADA systems and in proprietary operating systems. I know at Exxon Pipeline, we were a renegade in Exxon because we went with Data General equipment. And we did that because we wanted to integrate our control systems with our business systems. Bad thinking, but that's what we did. And so this article kind of talked about that. At the very end of the conclusion, though, I had written in here that in the future, a pipeline company, or for that matter, any company, will need to use networks in order to be competitive or even to operate and administer a pipeline company. To maintain this competitive edge, pipeline companies must continue to develop and set standards for interface, control, and security of networks. And even back then, I know that in Exxon, we were thinking about security and controls, and I think probably the industry was pretty aware of controls. So as we go through this, I just kind of think about one thing we did was do a lot of risk assessments, and we didn't have the luxury of a framework like we have today, but we also didn't have an internet to deal with. Kind of the topics I want to cover today, and before I actually, the eBook that we developed, Richard and I co-authored this framework for SCADA cybersecurity. So about 4 chapters are tied to the framework, risk assessments, SCADA, and we teach our students in this area So one thing that students are having problems with is the cost of books. So one reason we did this was so they don't have to pay for a book. But it's also good for industry, and we do a lot of industry boot camps on how to look at the framework and also to do risk assessments. We developed this book when we were actually in Dallas at the University of Texas at the 4th NIST framework workshop, and we started talking about, well, it'd be good if we had have a kind of a quick reference type book. This is not a huge book. It's about 170 some pages. I didn't want it to be. We have, like, our firewall and VPN textbook we use is only like 215 pages. We used to have books that were 700 or 800 pages. They still, even though those 200-page books are still like $80 or $90. So that's one of the reasons for this book. And so our key objectives, I'm going to talk about the key objectives in just a minute, and we'll talk about the outline of the content. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but I'll try to give you some highlights of what's covered in the ebook. And then our training programs, we have a cybersecurity programs at our university and through Sun Online. And then we also offer these boot camps, and mainly the boot camps for industry, not for conventional, traditional students. And then a little bit about our university and what we're doing in cybersecurity. We're basically becoming pretty well known. And how many of y'all have heard of the National Initiative in Cyber Education? You should have, because Montana Williams gave a presentation here not too long ago, and we work pretty close with his group on an ongoing basis. And then we'll give some time for questions and answers, although you can interrupt me any time. So the purpose of the book was to provide a quick reference guide to the framework itself, and then promote the awareness of cybersecurity critical infrastructure framework, the SCADA cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, the importance of risk assessments, how to use the framework, and then look into applying security to the InduSoft Web Studio. We're a partner with InduSoft. They donated about $125,000 worth of software to our university, and we teach those SCADA classes through using their product. And the really neat thing about their product is with the scripting, because part of our requirements under the National Security Agency and Department of Homeland Security is students must have been introduced to scripting and understand how to use scripting, especially from a cyber perspective. The key objectives of the book was the knowledge of SCADA and cybersecurity environment, what the types of SCADA systems would be, the threats and risk, and then I kind of highlighted these: understanding of the framework, knowledge of tools and processes for risk analysis, and then the ability to apply risk management processes to obtain the right framework tier for an organization. And the whole theme of this book, and one of the main purposes, is we're trying to promote that the framework, but we're also trying to promote, based on the work that we did with the Idaho Labs and New Mexico Tech, we want people to understand how important risk assessments are, and then the tools, which was developed through the labs, the CSET tool. How many of y'all have used CSET or are aware of CSET? So we think it's a great tool. Of course, we've been working with the developers for several years on that, but it's a free tool, and our students really like it. I know that. We teach it in both the boot camp and our accredited hour programs. So Chapter 1 is a SCADA cybersecurity introduction, and we just, again, thinking of the student in this case, because a lot of you all already know what a SCADA system is. Some people coming into our classes for the first time don't, so we give them an introduction. I call it SCADA 101. So how does it work? And then we have an in-depth look at SCADA systems, more in-depth. and then we talk about the field devices, the control units, and the HMI, what makes up a SCADA system. When I was developing SCADA systems for TRW controls, we did power utility systems, water and wastewater, and pipeline control systems. That's how I came to work for Exxon. But we used to call it man-machine interface. If you've gone back that long ago, I don't know, but now it's called the HMI. And the overview of the cybersecurity vulnerabilities also is one of the things we cover. And what we try to do in the book is tie in what we teach in our core cybersecurity programs at the university, and make the people aware of how the vulnerabilities in cybersecurity, the challenges, understanding and defining information security, and then the cyber threat sources in control and SCADA systems, and then also looking at things like the GAO, and I'll talk a little bit more about these threats, and attacks and defenses, and then the vulnerability scanning and the penetration testing. So another thing that the labs developed, the Sandia labs, Jennifer DePoy and her group there at the labs, they were pretty active in helping develop the some of the open source software for penetration testing. Ant Farm. How many of y'all have done that? Ant Farm. It's a passive, so it won't take your system down. They use it in the power utility systems. They use it in hydroelectric dams. You can get the labs to come out and actually do a free assessment for critical infrastructure. So if you need information on that, I'd be glad to help. And then understanding the control system cyber vulnerabilities. And a lot of this, I didn't do the research on this. I'm kind of a teacher, so but the labs did most of this, and New Mexico Tech, and working with them and our university in developing the training. That was our role in this whole thing. And Eric Cornelius, he used to be the Department of Homeland Security coordinator at Idaho Labs. He's no longer there. He unfortunately left us. But a lot of the looking at SCADA systems and the categories of SCADA systems that we do in the book came from that research and that study. And it actually ties into a lot of forensics. Doing forensics on control systems is not an easy thing to do, and not looked at very favorably by the management or the staff when you try to come in there and do that. And I can understand that, being a pipeline guy. I didn't want anybody messing with our systems. You take the system down, you're in big trouble. And so that's the whole idea of this ant farm and some of the passive and the key for risk assessments. We look at information security components and of course the basics around availability in hardware and software, the confidentiality and integrity, and then your communications. Products, the physical security also of the infrastructure. And we're talking about the enterprise when we talk about all of this in the network. You can't just, because everything's tied together now, and I'll talk about that in a minute, you have to look at everything. And then the people, the personal safety, but also the insider threats and the education of people. I had a conversation here last year, I think, with one of the people at the Houston conference, and they were saying, well, we think we're doing a lot. We've spent a lot of money in cybersecurity, and we're really doing good. But the area we have an issue is with people. And I think that's true just about everywhere from what I've been hearing. And there's a Sandia Labs in California are actually doing a study right now on how to incorporate more awareness in cybersecurity and some training programs. And that's one of the things we try to do too. Is that's why we're like here at this this forum to make everybody aware. The Government Accounting Office, here's a threat table. We kind of go into some of the details about bot network operators and criminal groups and foreign intelligence services, the hackers, the insiders. And it gets down to these terrorists. When Richard was mentioning that he thinks there's going to be more attacks on control systems and SCADA systems, and where would those come from? A lot of them, believe it or not, and this is some of the history from the labs that we had in Infragard. I used to belong to Infragard Albuquerque, and we had a lot of the lab people there, and they could share these stories about insiders that were more of a risk than anything from outside, and they had a couple cases of that. So, and then, of course, these terrorists really scares the heck out of me, knowing if they could go into a refinery or a chemical plant, they could do some major damage. And that we talk about, we get into the steps of a cyber attack. Some of this is just basic information, but again, it applies too for the SCADA systems. One of the things we do in our boot camps is actually go through scenarios, examples, and like Stuxnet and Flame and some of those malwares that how do you detect them? How do they get propagated through the systems? Those type of things. But this is just an example where you probe for information, penetrate defenses, modify security settings, and then paralyze network devices is what your ultimate goal is. We actually, our students participate in the National Cyber League competitions, and so they get to do a lot of this in a controlled environment. We use NDG Net Labs. I don't know if you've heard of those, but anyway, it's a virtual lab, and it's a safe environment for these competitions. And that really gives them a hands-on and real-world thing. I was in Washington, D.C. About 3 years ago at the National Security Institute conference, and Sherry Ramsey, I don't know if any of you all know Sherry, but she's the used to be the director of the NSA Operations Center in Virginia, and she had this. We talk about the Internet of Things and how things have changed. I always like this. This is her slides that she gave me, but the cyber environment, how it's accelerating, evolving, and expanding. And so she said you got the geographical layer, then you have the physical network layer, then you have the local network layer that you're dealing with, and then you have the cyber organization and or the personal layer, or the Internet of Things. Now, it's just about anything out there can be tied in. In fact, and then we have that individual person. What they were trying to, and this kind of goes back to some work that we were doing with them with supercomputers. They had this idea about monitoring, which NSA, this is before the NSA, all the NSA publicity came out, but looking at one individual with multiple complex relationships to other levels of that environment. And that's kind of what we're facing in the cybersecurity. You know that. And then it's always changing. At all times it's changing. So that's something that wasn't happening so much with our pipeline control system in 1986, and talking about doing updates and everything. We didn't do any updates. Everything was frozen. You didn't want to just leave it alone because it was working. And and I'll talk a little bit about that. We do that, talk about it in the book. The control system environment has become more complex because we're tied to the internet. We're tied to the business computing systems through local area networks. Then also we may have our own proprietary and private networks, and then we're tied to the field devices. Some of it's wireless. Some of it is satellite. And then we also go into the categories, and this is some work done from the labs, and Eric, actually Cornelius, in his work around looking at forensics for SCADA systems. So what we try to explain here, there's three different types of SCADA systems. The modern common system on the left, at the top left, are those SCADA systems that have been put in the last 10 years, or current ones. They're usually open systems, and they have, the good thing about them is they do have the capabilities where you can do forensics investigation, and you do have modern tools that you can use to help protect those systems. You get to on the top right-hand side is the modern proprietary, and those are kind of a hybrid, so you still have some proprietary software systems in there, but they're still not older than 10 years. They're just about 10 years old. Then the lower one is the legacy proprietary, and these are systems that are 10, 15, 20 years old. And we just did about 18 months ago, we had a pipeline company that came in, brought their engineers in and their IT folks, and we did a boot camp there in Ruidoso for them. And of course we were using the CSET tool, we asked them to bring their diagrams, they brought their diagrams, we put the diagrams in the CSET tool, and I look at the thing and there's a Data General MV 12,000 in the middle of all of this stuff. So I talk about, that was something that was put in. I remember when they put that system in, we've had a similar system, and that was in the 1980s, early 80s. So you get all types of, so a system like that can really be problematic when you're trying to look at a forensics review of what might have happened, and then also even trying to protect those type of systems. If they were standalone, that'd be a different thing, but they've been integrated into that. I was at NASA, I guess now it's been about 3 years ago, and they still have systems that when I was working on the Apollo project are still there. So it's just not oil and gas that they're guilty of having all these hybrid systems. The second chapter, we kind of go over the cybersecurity framework introduction, and of course we talk about the Executive Order 13636 for improving the critical infrastructure for cybersecurity. We get into risk management process. One of the things I wanted to try to do is just not look at the framework as all these tables and a bunch of words, but look at it from a process perspective. That kind of comes back to my time in chemicals. The chemical people are really always looking at processes, and so having done a lot of work in that area, and Michael Hammer has got a lot of money from us for learning business process reengineering. We look at it from that point, and then we look at the cybersecurity framework. And all of you familiar with the framework? I would think that you would be, yeah. So, but we do go in and look at it from the core functions, and then we look at the tiers. We explain all of this and the fact that this is not mandatory right now. That was the talk in the workshops. How many of y'all, did any of you go to any of the workshops? I know that there was some Exxon folks there. I ran into some of them when I was there. But anyway, some of the concern was, are they going to make this a law? Are they going to make us do this? But right now, that isn't the case, so which is probably good. And so the tiers help you kind of identify where you're going to be, and it has to do with looking at how you're working with your suppliers and where you're comfortable. So tier 4 is really supposed to be something is the top. That doesn't mean everybody has to shoot for tier 4. It's a business decision, and we talk about. I try to explain that later on in the book, and then the framework profile where you're aligning your business requirements, your risk tolerance, and the resources you have in your organization, tied to the functions. So if you look at the functions, the categories, and the subcategories, that helps you do that entire risk assessment. And then I kind of looked at it from like a risk management decomposition diagram. So we have the risk identification. We're looking at inventory, classifying those assets, identifying the threats, looking at the vulnerabilities, and then the control analysis of what we have currently, and then what are we planning to do, and then the risk assessment itself is determine the probability, impact analysis, and risk determination. This stuff is not stuff we were doing back. I know at Exxon we were doing this back in the 80s, so it's just part of our normal control system. So the framework wasn't news to a lot of us, but we had to get our input in, or it would have been not maybe very good news if we didn't get some input into it. And then the risk control itself, the plans and budgets, the implementation, and the measurements. And then in Chapter 3, we kind of look at the framework overview and the core of the framework. And then I looked at it as a business process management approach to the framework. So you have your different categories and your subcategories, the information references, subject matter experts, and stakeholders. One thing that it may not be a requirement, but if you do this on a voluntary basis, and I would say most organizations that I know in the oil and gas industry are pretty good about doing this stuff anyway, but at least, and I don't know about Shell, but I do know others that have done it that are pretty conscientious. But there's a big cost to this assessment because of the subject matter experts and the time you have to take away from their normal job to do these assessments. And I know this company that we did, the pipeline company, that was one of their biggest issues, trying to bring all these people together. And even it was a 4-day boot camp, it was a big cost to them. Even if you do it for free, there's a cost involved. So, and then we looked at that critical infrastructure framework assessment itself, and then what the enablers were was the framework guidelines, of course, the subject matter experts, senior management's buy-in, and the technologies we used, like the CSET tool. If you're doing penetration testing, you need something like AntFarm, and then the budgets have to be an enabler. So you're going to have some money to do this. Nothing's really free. And then the governance would be the government regulations, because, and I say, well, you said that the cybersecurity framework was not mandatory. No, but there are other standards, and when you go into CSET tool, you know that it's going to identify, you can use those standards to do your risk assessment off of those requirements that you have. So there may be more than just the critical infrastructure. And then business policies also will have an impact on this. The outputs would be identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And then you need to measure this stuff. So what's the cycle times to get the... you can look at it a couple different ways. One way we look at the cycle time was in the process itself. So what's the time for us to recover a system, to respond? How long does it take to detect these? So that's one way to look at it. What's the cost? And it also goes to the risk assessment. What's the cost of when you're doing that analysis of what's the probability of this happening, and then what's the cost if it does happen? And then is it worth doing it, or do we try to eliminate it, do we mitigate it, or do we just live with it? In some cases, you may just have to live with it. Again, it may also go back to safety, in which the CSET tool actually ties that into safety, to the community safety, and it also looks at safety from, and if you're in oil and gas, I know at Exxon, everything was safety. Even in the offices, we had safety meetings every day, I think. Anyway, and then what I call conditions of satisfaction, which would tie back to those tiers based on the business and the senior management requirements. So. And then this is just from the workshop too, some diagrams that we discussed, and I'm not going to go into more detail. I'm kind of running out of time. Chapter 4, we look at how to use the framework, basic review of cyber security practices, establish or improving the cybersecurity program, and then communicating those requirements with the stakeholders. So from management on up, and then that whole process flow there is defined, and we explain how to go about establishing and improving a cybersecurity program. So you may not have, the framework helps companies and organizations to have no established cybersecurity program, or it also helps those that already have those in place, which probably most of you all do. In fact, when we did the last boot camp we did, that pipeline company, you know, they weren't starting from scratch. They had already had a risk assessments and a profile that was already set up. And then we talk about using the CSET tool for risk management and the future framework analysis. So when you use the tool, it lets you select the standards, and one of those standards can be the framework, or it could be one of the other standards, which I'll show you in a minute. And then once you select the standard, there's a set of questions that automatically they're going to get generated that you'll ask the subject matter experts. And then determine the assurance level, and what kind of level you want to be at, and that could tie back to those tiers. And then create a diagram. That's actually the network diagram of all the equipment, everything you have. That can be pretty extensive. And then answer the questions. Once you've gone through this, the diagram, the assurance levels, and the standards create the questions for the risk assessment, basically, in CSET. And then once you've answered all of those, hopefully with subject matter experts and the best you can answer, you get reports, and you get an executive report, you get some dashboards, you get gaps analysis, and you actually get a project kind of list if you want to address those certain issues. The CSET tool looks something like this. 6.1 is the one that incorporates 6.0 and 6.1 incorporated the framework, and so the NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure. Version 1 is the recommended one if you're going to apply this to what we're talking about in the eBook. But if you can see all these others, I highlighted some of them in red. The TSA pipeline security guidelines from April 2011 could be one of those. So you can select that standard in the tool and run the risk assessment off that tool. We have our students we have a disaster recovery, business continuity, risk assessment course that we teach, and part of that is they follow the CSET, and they have to use. They actually have a real case that they try to follow through on. And then Chapter 5 is the InduSoft, where we get down into the InduSoft security, what Richard's, some of the information from Richard's eBook. And then in the appendix, we have the framework core, the CSET tool information, references, and glossaries. And then just to give you an example, when you do bring up the CSET 6.1, it gives you these assessment modes, and you can select either one of the standards for your industry, or you can select it has the area for cybersecurity framework implementation, and tiers, and then the profile. If you already have a profile, or if you want to set that profile up, then it generates the questions. That's a website, and you'll have access to this presentation, but you can go to that website to download the CSET tool, and in the ebook it gives you instructions on how to do that. Just a little bit about our programs. We have a self-paced, a computer network security certification program, credited and a self-paced. The self-paced is mainly professionals, and it's like $24.95, including all the textbooks and the labs, and you have a year to finish it. It's all at your own pace. Associates of Applied Science degree in Information Systems Cybersecurity, and these programs are to prepare our students for information security professionals. So for InfoSec 4011 and 4016, which is entry-level risk analyst. So those are the two primary areas we concentrate on. And then we also we're working on SCADA as well. We're also a CAE 2Y, Information Assurance and Cyber Defense accredited. There's only 6 community colleges right now under the new knowledge units, at least as of December 22nd, when we received our accreditation. There's more than that out there in community colleges, but they're under the old criteria. And the new criteria is called these knowledge units, and then they have special knowledge units, which SCADA is going to be one of those specials, which I helped work on the NICE initiative to help identify those two. I know that the University of Houston and the four-year universities, there's several four-year universities under the CAE, either CAE operational research or just a plain CAE certification. And there's still, right now, there's a span between the old standards and the new standards. And the new standards around the knowledge units. And then this is just kind of like some of the courses that we teach, the Network Security Fundamentals, the Guide to Disaster Recovery, Introduction to Information Systems, which really covers the InfoSec, firewalls and how they work, network defense and countermeasures, cyber ethics. The cyber ethics, professionalism, and career development came from my steering committee, which was made up of several oil and gas industries, and they said, if you don't put a ethics and a professionalism and a career development course in there, we're not going to support you. So, and I agree. And then we have the ethical hacking, and really they learn about penetration testing and whatnot. All this is in a controlled environment using NDG net labs. And then we have a capstone, which we require our students to either do an internship or the NCL Cybersecurity Challenge. And then our boot camp that we're looking at is a 4-day. It's going to be based off of this. It'll cover the CompTIA Security Plus topics, the recommendations on infrastructure principles. These are some requirements that the labs kind of put on us, and so they want us to do that critical infrastructure resource, key resources support. Probably most of y'all have done that online if you're aware of it, and the NIP if you're aware of those things. And then we also cover the critical infrastructure framework, the CAP process, which is another type of risk assessment, and then introduction to SCADA products through InduSoft and how that applies, and then the CSET tool. We actually do the actual hands-on. If you're going to do a boot camp with us as a company, we ask you to bring your diagrams and whatnot so we can preload all that stuff. And then, as I mentioned, we're a National Security Agency and Department of Homeland Security. We were designated on December the 22nd last year, and that doesn't sound like much, but I'll guarantee you it was like about 2 years worth of work to get us to that point. And you have to have articulation agreements with different four-year universities that are CAEs, and you have to have a lot of partnerships with the federal government and the private industry. So I'm willing to partner with any of you all that want to help work with it. And then also it's based on the university's ability to meet these increased demands for cybersecurity. And again, there's 11 knowledge units that we have to. Our curriculum is reviewed by two independent contractors. And then they also review and site visit with the university itself. And then we're also recognized through the National Initiative in Cyber Education, which is we're a certified training institute on their web portal. So if you go to that web portal, you'll see us listed there. So the eBook, if you it's free, or I think the default's 99 cents. The proceeds are going to go to our foundation. We actually set up scholarships in cybersecurity for our students as part of this foundation, and also it's been used to help fund like our NDG Net Lab infrastructure, which just the basic infrastructure was about $70,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for a community college that's only has about 1,200 students locally. Now, we have 365 students that we've serviced through our program since 2012, but it's all online. So most of our students are not local students. And then you need to contact me. And thank you for the time. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. It seems that a lot of the responsibilities under these frameworks typically in the corporate environment fall under, one house or another. So it might be information technology, it might be operations technology, it might be corporate security, or it might even be telecommunications if they're separated out. But a lot of the education that seems to be out there seems to be aimed at creating, a baseline for a new professional. But for professionals that are currently in this area that are working more closely with their counterparts in other sectors, what sort of education is out there now to help people all better understand areas that they need for their counterparts, and where, when counterparts need to be engaged earlier on to make sure that vulnerabilities aren't accidentally introduced or things like that?
Well, as far as an actual program, or there's some courses, for example, our course in disaster recovery, business continuity, and risk management actually goes over that and tying everybody, all these different organizations together, how to set up these teams, how to set up certs, how you interface. From a technical perspective, the more advanced courses are going to be at your four-year universities. One of our articulation agreements, there's a cyber operations degree and also professional training through like Excelsior College and the University of Maryland. Those are two that we work with. New Mexico Tech also does some work in that, but not as much in exactly what you're saying. And I agree. Now SANS, of course. If you go to the SANS Institute, I would recommend them from a professional's perspective. They're going to cost a lot of money, but I know that one of the things, we were contacted by the White Sands NASA not too long ago because by some contractors there, because I guess the federal government has said we're not going to pay for these SANS classes anymore, they're too expensive. And I don't know if it was an initiative from the White House or whatever, but they said that you need to go to your local colleges for training. So we are trying, in fact, we have one of our instructors, our adjunct professors is the cybersecurity coordinator for White Sands. So he's going to try to help us develop something that's more applied to people who are already in the business. And good question. So I don't know, but yeah, there is, and I guess maybe the role of the community college should be picking up more of those types of classes. Our self-paced class was geared more for, it takes our certification class, but we have a lot of veterans that come out of the military that were network administrators or systems administrators, and they want to get into the cyber, in the cyber world. That's where we targeted. We really didn't target the engineers at a community college anyway.
Let me say a couple of more things from our standpoint. We support many educational institutions with basically just giving them educational licenses because we recognize that people are not learning about SCADA system. There's nobody teaching SCADA system. There's nobody that's giving hands-on. So basically we're just giving software away to colleges and universities to help people get their feet wet in this. And then Stephen's curriculum is taking it a step further with the cybersecurity training and the certifications. So I think that more and more industries or companies that develop this SCADA software like ours will begin to participate in this more and more. But that's why we're excited to help participate and help students learn about this stuff. But that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have a question actually for both of you. You both spoke of the threat as coming. I mean, we're already seeing it in banking, we're seeing it in retail.
Right.
Yet, if we go look at ourselves, look at the malware that we are seeing and some of the threats that have occurred, oh, wow, this is like 2 to 3 years old by the time we figure it out.
Right.
We actually
I mean-
discussed that in our boot camps. I mean,
Well, one of my
that's-
questions is the threat already here? Are we not, are systems
Uh,
not already
Yes,
known?
yeah,
We just don't know it.
absolutely. I totally agree with that standpoint, even though we don't see a lot of evidence of it. I believe that people are tinkering with control systems at this point to try to figure out how to get in. That's what Stuxnet was all about. You know, it was a targeted attack on a very, very specific system that they had inside information in. But a lot of control systems are built similarly. And so by learning about the equipment, about the PLCs, their vulnerabilities, what will cause issues, it will eventually lead people to wanting to do bad things. There's a question about motivation also. Obviously, the high-profile ones right now are just targeting people and money, that because they want it, or they can get it, or whatever. There might be people just fooling around, like kids fooling around, trying to see if they can go into a water plant and turn it off or overflow a tank or whatever. But there are, I mean, especially with refineries, there could be a serious boom event. With a chem plant, there could be a serious boom event if processes aren't shut down or they're interrupted. And it's entirely possible that there could be worse things that will happen. As a matter of fact, the trend is that there will be worse things that will happen in some years. I put a figure on of 5 years before we see a lot of things, but I could be wrong. I mean, it could go out further, or we might turn it completely around. I don't know. I really can't talk to that. I don't have a crystal ball.
I don't wanna go Joe Weiss on you, but I think.
Oh,
that
yeah.
It's already
Joe's a friend,
there.
yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah, Joe says that all the
I'm not
time,
trying to
yeah,
play
yeah.
Joe, it's
No,
Martin
no,
Luther
no,
Tuesday, so
you're
we'll have
absolutely
fun, but-
spot on, you're absolutely spot on, and Joe and I spoke at a lot of conferences back in around the 2000, 2001 area with Joe, and we totally agree on this, absolutely, totally agree on it. He's pretty passionate about a lot of things, but I mean, the evidence is there that we're already involved in it, and that's why people should wake up and say,
We already have pipelines that go boom, we already have
exactly.
refineries that have, you know, call it accident, call it whatever you
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
At the end of the day, does it matter?
And then
Yes.
there's this fact that you can be held ransom over, okay, I can shut your system down. How much is that gonna cost you?
So, that's a question, more a comment or an observation. The example, I don't think that any of us dispute the point you're trying to make, but the article in particular with Yokogawa, Cisco, and Shell, surprisingly enough, I actually see that as very good news, and I'll explain what I mean. I don't think anybody here in this room is naive enough to believe that Shell is protecting their industrial control systems based on antivirus and virus updates. The manufacturer is one of the big issues that we've all been running into. Is the manufacturers are very much, who cares? Kind of like, we're selling our stuff, operators are buying them. For once now, we're seeing that most likely, although I don't know all the details here, but most likely Shell has put enough pressure on your Shell together with Cisco to put a program in place so that the answer that the manufacturers give isn't just do a segregated network and don't worry about it because viruses won't get into that network, which we all know is not true. Actually, I think that's probably a very positive article saying that Yokogawa is finally taking this thing serious enough to pull their sleeves up, work with Cisco, work with Shell, try to prove that at least 50 sites can get up and running where they do have antivirus and updated signatures, together with the other means and mechanisms that they put in place. So I don't believe that that's a negative. I think it's actually very positive.
I tend to be a little sarcastic in that, and that's why I said it was only my opinions. But you're spot on. You're right on the money, and I totally believe that as well. Because we do it. Our customers are demanding cybersecurity guidance, And that's why we went to this trouble. And more, for instance, our parent company, Schneider Electric, has a website devoted to this and has a team of analysts that help their customers as well. So while we're a little tiny company doing it, Schneider's bigger, I mean, Siemens is doing it. We know all the major players are doing it. It's just that, sorry, I've been in the industry so long, I just came a little
People factor,
cheap.
though,
Yeah.
without a doubt, is the issue.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be in an event sitting next to one of the chief architects of one of the larger electric explosives manufacturing companies, doesn't matter which one of them. And we got into the conversation. This was a total nonprofit event. We got into the conversation. And I said, after about half an hour of conversing, I said, I have a real serious question, and I hope you're not offended by it. You guys do a crappy job when it comes to cybersecurity, cyber defense. And he says, it's very interesting that you bring that up because we've been thinking kind of the same, but our clients aren't requesting and demanding it. And then when you speak to a lot of the folks that attend these types of events that are in those positions of responsible for cybersecurity, cyber defense, their voice is many times not heard when the negotiations go on between the clients and the manufacturers themselves. It's, they want better pricing, they want deliveries in a certain time, certain type of functionality, and our voices of cybersecurity, cyber defense just doesn't reach that negotiation table. So the manufacturers themselves don't really do much. So once again, back to the article, it's actually pretty encouraging that somebody was loud enough to Yokigawa for them to actually do something.
Yeah.
In the CAP process, I mentioned that we teach in the boot camps is basically part of that CAP is looking at anything that's kind of hard, like change management, is just that basic change management, but anything that's introduced into the enterprise network has to be assessed prior to being approved. So it goes back to even when you're working with the supplier, they have to meet these requirements or we'll not even, we can't do business with you. So it ties that whole thing in. It's not easy to do. I know, having worked in the industry, it's not that, but it's a culture that has to get there, like safety is a culture. Most of us are all safety oriented, so you have to get that same culture for cybersecurity, and that's where, even in the NSA, when I was at the NSI conference, I try to go every year. I missed last year, I'm going this year, but there's a, I can't remember her name now, but she's a training person for, basically for cybersecurity awareness. And so her company came into the NSA, and they did this thing on phishing and in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they sent phishing emails out, and 40% of the people answered them at the NSA. So, I mean, that was her story anyway, whether it's true or not. But it is the people trying to get that we're actually looking at a National Science Foundation grant where we're going to try to do some work. I mentioned the labs in California, and they have a psychologist and some other of those type of people that it's kind of now it's called what's it called, STEM with an A, so the arts are involved, but they're trying to bring in the social impact of this, and so we're trying to see how what kind of processes or what things could be done to help better the awareness of cybersecurity in the workforce and at home. Because one of the problems, and that's why we have the cyber ethics class, that people take their information that they get at work and sometimes put it out on LinkedIn or Facebook, or one of those social medias, and you have major problems. Anyway, I really, I'm available if you want to talk about that social thing when we get ready to do that grant. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm glad to see you recognize that moving the people ball is probably the more important one to do. And I'm interested in understanding for oil and gas companies, for most of our businesses outside the U.S., the focus on assessments and whatnot is following the NIST framework. Yet when we put in our contracts or any of our assessment material, we're pointing to the IEC 62443 series or ISO 99. Where do you see the, because it's tough to get my guy in Indonesia to use a U.S. government tool set and framework to assess their area. So how can we, what's your thought about moving that ball towards the industry, or sorry, the international standards?
Well, I think that's really the direction we're going to have to do. I know that actually the UK is looking at the infrastructure that was developed, the cyber, our infrastructure framework. But I mean, ultimately, there's going to have to be more of the ISO or international standards. And if you look at it from the CSET tool, I think you can incorporate both, personally.
Yeah, you can choose your own framework in the CSET tool. So you don't have to use the NIST.
You don't have to use the NIST framework. You can still tell, I mean, if there's a question whether you're meeting that or not, you can say sure, because you could test what your current practices are with the framework using the CSET tool, and I bet you that if you're using those standards, you're going to be pretty close. Anyway, it's a business decision for that company. It's not, unless it becomes law, which it isn't law. I think if you're proactive in trying to meet one of these standards, and those ISO standards are can be included in the CSET tool. So I don't know if I answered it, but I mean,
well, it's two parts. So there's one, how you're training new people to grow in this industry, and then the second part is our work with our people that are in the field, non-U.S., non-English native speaking personnel,
right,
and our automation vendors are recognizing international standards as the way that they're developing their products,
exactly,
and then injecting cybersecurity. So every time we come with our NIST hat on, it kind of says, okay, why is DHS coming our way type thing?
right.
And it's very difficult to decouple you want the folks that are not part of the U.S. to be part of the program, right, and follow a framework. But the challenge is trying to use things that are kind of really U.S. government.
During the discussions for the NIST cybersecurity framework, a lot of these same questions came up about international standards. And the idea was, at least within NIST, the NIST framework, if everything that was out there could be incorporated into it, then people that were using it, it would be covered. Okay, the ideas would be covered. And then the CSET tool came along, and now you can really develop your own questions if you want to, based on any standard. So you don't have to use the NIST. It's just that it happens to be topical right now. I mean, focus.
And there were
question, and then I think we'll go ahead and get wrapped up here, and then we can continue the conversation offline.
Mike and Scott, how do you get a copy of the CSET tool?
Well, I'm actually glad you asked that question. Our presenters have discussed the CSET tool quite a bit, and cybersecurity evaluation tool. I happen to have a copy so that those of you that are a little hesitant to download something from the federal government that you may be a little suspicious of, we have a copy here. Now keep in mind that this is 12, 14, 16 months old and has gone through several revisions. But it is an excellent tool that you can use to identify some of the issues that you may have with your systems, particularly your vulnerabilities, and based upon the standards that you select, it will give you options for consideration to mitigate those vulnerabilities based upon the standards that you've selected. So you're welcome to take one of these. It includes the CSET tool itself. It'll give you an idea of how it works. If you want to, you can go and download the actual version itself. It's standalone. And it spits out a pretty darn good report based upon the answers that you give. And it also has a tremendous library associated with this, including templates for establishing various plans, policies, and procedures for your programs. So I've got 10 here, and Art's going to challenge me with
No, I'm gonna tell you, you underestimated or you underplayed the best part about the tool now. And that is, in my 3-day SCADA class that we teach, the students want more time on that because they wanna go see, okay, if I wanna secure a nuclear power reactor, all the rules are in there with all the details. So I don't run a nuke, but if I ran a nuke, how do they do it differently? And once they get, I don't do this until the very end of the class because once they have this tool and start playing, it's sort of like giving students Google or YouTube. You'll lose them. But lookup feature is really been enhanced, it's really worthwhile.
That's great.
Also, you go out to the websites for, when you go to that, to get the CSET, but that whole website on control systems, the labs have developed a lot of things. One of the things we use in our courses too is securing your SCADA and industry control systems. It's kind of a quick reference, but it's kind of nice. It's good for the students. We try to supplement what we can so we don't have to burden them with all these book costs. And actually, this is really good stuff.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Richard, very much for the